Gospel Revolutionaries, it's Daniel Rouse with the Gospel Revolution. I am so happy to be a part of your day today. Thanks for welcoming me into your home, into your car, in your workplace, wherever you may find yourself watching this video or listening to it. I am happy to share with you again here on our bonus room study on this wonderful Tuesday. So, have you ever been to a library? I lived in Washington, D.C. several years ago and had the opportunity to visit the Library of Congress. And wow, books beyond books beyond books. We live also in a technological age. You know, I got my computer right here, and you can jump on Google, and in milliseconds, you can do searches and have answers to things that it would have taken people years to study. All this information at our fingertips. I mean, just think about the Bible. For many generations and many hundreds of years, to possess a Bible like this, even in some places in the world today, to have a Bible or access to this written word is very rare. Count yourself privileged to have access to information. We here at the Gospel Revolution unashamedly declare that our foundation for truth is the Hebrew Scriptures. We have gone through hours and hours of explanation. Off air, we've gone through hours and thousands of hours of study into why we say that is our stance, the Hebrew Scriptures. When I was in Christianity, the Bible from cover to cover was everything I stood for. And, I was always kind of leaning towards grace, even in my Word of Faith doctrine. In the Word of Faith camp, at least when I was around it, there were two camps within the camp. You had a legalistic side and you had a grace side, and then you had this group that tried to straddle the middle a little bit and try to have one foot in and one foot out. I remember even sitting in my dad's congregation and listening to his sermons. It seems like one Sunday he'd teach the wonderful grace of God, and the next Sunday fiery judgment. And I have to tell you that if you hold the Bible to be the Word of God, then that's what you have to do, because there are two gospels. There are two views of the good news in the Bible. And it was when I began to realize that, and that's why there were some places in the Bible that I struggled with, leaning towards grace. There were some statements and different things that were said, and some commands, if you will, that were stated even in the New Testament that made me wonder. My uncle, who has now passed away, wrote a really, really thick book about grace. But it was more of the legalistic side of this Word of Faith camp that he stood upon on grace. And he talked a lot about following the commandments of Jesus, which I dare anybody to try to do. Go ahead and try to live by the commands of Jesus, and I guarantee you nobody on the earth will be able to do that. Then the commandments of the apostles. And again, I double dog, triple dog dare any of you to try to live by the commandments of the apostles and the things that they told people to do. Go ahead and try to live that lifestyle. And I'm going to be a testament. I did try it. And I went down that road and I tried to live by the words of Christ. I tried to live by the commands of the apostles. And I'm telling you something, I've discovered that it is not possible. It is not possible to live a behavior modification life to the degree that they command. And I came to the conclusion that those teachings were legalistic. Even though they were tried to spun around in a way of grace, grace is God's power to keep the law. We had the president of the organization that I was ordained through. That was his opening statement on his book about grace, is that grace was God's ability so that we could keep the law of God. Whoa! Now, I'm not here to talk about any of that, but what I'm here to talk about is the fact that there is an instability. You will live an unstable life if you try to live by all the precepts of the Bible. So how do we here at the Gospel Revolution come to stand upon the fact that the Hebrew Scriptures is the source of our truth, of our doctrine, of what we teach? Why do we teach from the Hebrew Scriptures? Many, many reasons. But we are getting ready and want to do a little bit of a tease here for our upcoming fall conference, which will take place in September. We'll have exact dates and information out to you in the near future. But we are endeavoring to talk about the pseudo-graphical writings in the Bible, specifically the New Testament. Why specifically the New Testament? If we hold to the Hebrew Scriptures so much, then why don't we address the pseudo-graphical writings in the Hebrew Scriptures, in the law, the Psalms, and the prophets? And the answer to that is really simple, because they're not there. The only place that you will find pseudo-graphical writings in the Old Testament, that would be the pages that precede Matthew, would be in some unorthodox Bible, like Catholic Bible and some of the other Eastern Bibles, Eastern canons of the Bible, where you will find the book of Enoch, you'll find the books of Adam and Eve, and all these different types of books that are out there. I think Maccabees is one of them. And you see all of these writings are pseudo-graphical. You just do, I just mentioned to you that you can go to Google. Now, I'm not saying that Google is the most trustworthy, because all it does is it pulls searches from other people's research, but do your research. But the information is there. If you dig a little bit and find out what these Bible scholars have written about all of these things, those who have studied and looked at them, and those who read the Hebrew and read the Greek and can tell the difference between the writing styles and the different words that are used. There's a great science that goes into declaring a writing as a pseudo-graphical writing. But we have been stunned each and every time that we progress in our understanding, is that the Hebrew Scriptures become more and more stable. I opened up by thinking about all of the information that's available in all of the world, all of the books that are available. I mean, if you could, I had it's probably expired now, but I have a Library of Congress card that I could go in and look and ask for any of these books that are available. You have access at your fingertips if you have a smartphone or a computer, and you can Google search or Bing search, whatever your platform may be, for all this information. If you're on Amazon, you have access to millions of books. All of this information available, but man's quest for truth has always been there, and I think all of these books and even technology is evident of that, is that men are in the search for truth. And it is amazing that every step we take at the Gospel Revolution, we find that the Hebrew Scriptures ring true. Now, some of our people who don't agree with that make statements like, well, all right, for instance, I just told you to try to live by the principles of Jesus that Jesus taught. And they would say, well, go ahead and try to live by the principles of the Hebrew Scriptures. And that is exactly a true point. And that is part of the gospel story, though. Part of the gospel story is the law that resides within the gospel. The Apostle Paul writes about it, and he said the truth that is in the law. That's amazing to think that there is a truth that can be found in the law. What is the truth? And the conclusion that Paul came to about the law is that there's none righteous, no, not one. That no man can be justified by the works of the law. That's the truth of the law. So then justification and righteousness must come from a different point. That is the gospel. Because the point in which righteousness came was from the only one who was righteous. Righteousness itself, God, the very character, the very being of God, merged his life. Now I'm preaching to you, and that wasn't my intent to come out here and preach. I wanted to talk about the pseudo-graphical writings. But that's the point, is that within every one of these things, we'll go ahead and try to live by the prophetic words that Isaiah did. No, that's the joy, is we get to live in the fulfillment of that. When Jesus, he spoke of the law, the Psalms, and the prophet. By the way, it was Jesus' encouragement to go and study them, to go and search them. Jesus. You want to trust anybody, I think trust Jesus. Jesus was the one that said, go search them. Daniel doesn't say, I'm not here standing on my own authority saying go search the scriptures, though I think it's a wonderful, magnificent idea. You don't have to listen to me, but you might want to listen to Jesus. Jesus is the one that said, go and search the scriptures. Find it. Look for it. And what did he say about the law and the Psalms and the prophets? He said, I didn't come to destroy them. I came to fulfill them. So the very fulfillment of the prophecies that are spoken in the law were fulfilled in Christ. And Christ said, all of these spoke about me. Again, speaking about the Hebrew scriptures, the law, the Psalms, and the prophets. So we stand firm this far, and we're ready to change our mind if we come up with information that changes our mind. But to this point, we have come to solidly stand upon the Hebrew scriptures as our source for truth. The law, the Psalms, and the prophet, which vastly differs from the New Testament. Because if you take the whole Bible, from Genesis to the Revelation, and attempt to stand upon that as the entire Word of God, divinely spoken, and without error, the inherent, God-breathed, inspired Word from God himself. As if God was standing before you, speaking these very words to you personally. That's how I used to look at the Bible. If you take it that way, then I'm going to tell you that your life is going to be unstable. Because one day you're going to be living in grace, and the next day you'll be living by the law. Because there are two views of the good news presented in the New Testament. From between Matthew and the Revelation, there are two views. One is that of completion, and one is that of something is yet to be completed. One is that of the finished work of Christ, and one is that of Christ is coming back to finish his work. In the meantime, we need to work. That's the sum of it. And what you find is that there are disagreements between Matthew and the Revelation. Vast disagreements. And it's amazing, the stories about these disagreements are right there. Look at Acts 15, Acts 21, Galatians 1, 2, and 3. Look at the story that's presented between the battle for who had the right gospel. And we've come to the conclusion that Paul lost that debate, even though we believe Paul was trying to teach the Hebrew scriptures. Apollos was trying to teach the Hebrew scriptures, and even their messages got hijacked. They got hijacked, and there were inserted text into them called the pseudo-graphia. That's what we're going into in the fall. But what about pseudo-graphia in the Hebrew scriptures? We have found out that in the law, the Psalms, and the prophets, there is none. We can stand firm and we can trust in the law, the Psalms, and the prophets. And it is amazing. Michael and I, in our personal study just the other day, we came across this wonderful text in Malachi. Oh my God, so good. And it is so crystal clear. And I don't know how many times I read Malachi chapter 3, especially when I was taking up offerings. And then right there in front of us was the gospel portrayed in a very powerful, specific, detailed way. The Hebrew scriptures just, they don't cease to amaze us. And the pseudo-graphia that's presented in the New Testament is not visible in the Old, in the Hebrew scriptures, in the law, the Psalms, and the prophets. Now, there may be some debate, and maybe we'll have some conversation about that in the future, about some of these historical books in what's considered the Old Testament, that which precedes the book of Matthew, such as 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1st, 2nd Chronicles. We haven't really got that far in understanding. We've really just been focusing in on the law, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Psalms, and the prophets. Because that's what Jesus zeroed in on. And there could be some debate about some stories that don't line up in the historical books. But we're not saying that those are part of the Hebrew Scriptures. We're very firm to say that the law, the Psalms, and the prophets are part of the Hebrew Scriptures. And maybe that's another vein that we need to search into. And I'd love to hear from you on your thoughts and your ideas on some of these things. But when it comes to the pseudo-graphia, Bible scholars agree that pseudo-graphia is rampant in the New Testament. Most of it includes it. And that's not even getting into mistranslations. And, when Don did his session here several years ago, he blew my mind by showing that even the manuscripts that we have, the thousands and thousands of manuscripts that we have of the New Testament, and 0 of them agree. 0 of them are in harmony. There are more differences between the different manuscripts that are found of the New Testament than there are words in the New Testament. Did you hear that? There are more differences in the manuscripts, the original manuscripts that we have, the copies of the New Testament. There are more differences than there are words in the New Testament. That's got to raise your eyebrow and sound the alarm. But when it comes to the Hebrew Scriptures, the law, the Psalms, and the prophets, every single one of them agrees almost to I think it was somewhere around 95 to 97% agreement. And we're talking about documents that are 4,000-5,000 years old, that go back all the way to Genesis, that go back all the way to Moses. Documents that were written, and they are 95% in agreement. And the only reason they can't reach 100 is because they have manuscripts that are broken or missing parts. That might be missing a page, and so it can't agree because it's just not there, because they don't have it. that there is a very, very, very big difference between the stability of the Hebrew Scriptures and the New Testament. So as we pursue this, we just want to lay the foundation and let you know this is where we're coming from. And yes, we are persuaded, and we're going to stand on that until we're proven wrong, or until we see ourselves wrong, that the Hebrew Scriptures are our foundation for truth. And this is yet another reason why. Because it's stable. Because it was a ministry in the Old Testament. These guys, they lived to make sure that every copy that was presented of the Hebrew Scriptures was perfect. And if it wasn't, they threw it in the fire and burned it and started all over again. Pseudo-graphical writings in the Bible? Yes. In the Hebrew Scriptures? No. Unless you have a Catholic Bible or some Eastern unorthodox canon of the Bible, then you're not going to see these pseudo-graphical writings. The average Bible that people have today does not have pseudo-graphical writings in the Hebrew Scriptures. Another reason yet that we can say the Hebrew Scriptures has proven itself, even to us here at the Gospel Revolution, who question and challenge everything. It has proven to us yet again to be stable and to be a firm foundation for truth. Men can look all over. They can read books. They can Google search. You can ask Siri. You can ask Alexa. You can ask whoever and whomever you want to, and you're going to get opinions. But what we have found to be true thus far regarding the gospel, and even some other things, even some science things, which Michael likes to talk about, the Hebrew Scriptures has proven time and time again to be correct. I love you. Stay tuned. Coming fall, we've got a lot more information coming, and our eyes are being wide open, and we're excited to see what's in store. Love you.